Tuesday, April 25th. And we'd like to stand for the pledge as Mr. Thomas reads us the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, before we have the agenda approval of the entire agenda, how about we just get confirmation that we want to approve the items in the consent agenda, and we added an item since the publication. And so first off, we have a letter from a resident regarding police department safety training. We have notification from Fire Chief Burdett on a recent ISO rating change. We'd like to congratulate the Chief and the fire department. That could translate into some savings, substantial savings on insurance for residents and businesses, I understand. So, Chief, we went from a 5 to, or from a 6 to a 5, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, great job on that. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. And item C that we added is that the board will consider the request from the applicant to move the tabled rezoning case of ZC number 649, which is at 5081 Genesee Road. It's the APC tower. Move that from our meeting tonight to May 11, 2017. So those are the items in the consent agenda. Unless somebody wants to pull one of those out, we'll go ahead and approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with that, I'd like to seek approval of the regular agenda.
So moved. Support.
Okay, motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, with that, we'll open the floor to public comment. So we'll start here on the left. Please give us your name and address, and we'll be
Yes.
set.
My name is Jim Brandon, and I live in Hickory Hill Farm Subdivision. And I'm not used to talking in public, but I'd like to congratulate all you guys. I voted for most of you. You're giving up your time in the evening. I couldn't do it. It's my bedtime. Believe it or not, I get up early. But I was here before you guys last year about parking and driveways, trailers, motor homes, stuff like that. And I talked to Ken Thomas here, and there seems to be some confusion a little bit. Mr. Thomas thought that you could do it for 15 days. And that's what I found out. That when I came in and talked to the guy that I was supposed to talk to, who is not here anymore, he just took a job with the state police, I believe. Is that right, Dave?
That is correct.
Okay. So somebody should congratulate him.
He's still here, though.
He's still here? Okay. But, I got 3 minutes, right? I hope I don't stutter too much. Okay, congratulations being back at
Thank you.
As it stands right now, it's 48 hours. As long as it's in the driveway, they can store it past the front of their house as long as they want. I believe that's the way the wording is now. Now, there's a petition that went around wanting to leave them in there permanent. Yeah, 365 days a year. I didn't see the petition because he wouldn't bring it to me. This guy 2 doors down from him. But he went around different places, and I don't know how many people signed it. I don't know, I didn't see the wording. But anyway, if it comes, stuff comes to pool, or however you want to say it, if there's going to be a big conflict about it, I'd just as soon it stayed at 48 hours, rather than put it up for a vote and they can stay 15 days or whatever. Now, most people have a side yard. I do. I've got a trailer in my backyard. I had a 28-foot power cruiser in my backyard. In fact, I've had quite a few, but they've always been in my backyard, never in my front yard. I've got a neighbor across from me, but the next door, their garage door is falling down. The house is a mess, but there have been some improvements in the neighborhood, some real nice improvements. Anyway, I'm just trying to get the keep the neighborhood clean, and nobody else seems to want to do it. Well, I'm willing to a point. Right now, they're blaming me. Everybody knows that there's a police comes out there for a trailer or anything like that, they know I did it because a girl police officer told one of the people I complained about who made the complaint. Well, that went around like, you know, gravy on potatoes.
Yeah.
I never heard that expression before. But anyway, I would like some help. Now, one instance last year, I complained about the trailer. This is a concession stand. It was there for a week. Okay? And the guy is nice. His family's nice. But this is what he wants, and this is what he insists. He's the one that took the petition around, by the way. So, the police officer came out. I'm talking to him out in the street. Of course, my neighbor 2 doors down seen everything. They stopped, talked to him too. And I said, it's been there about 5 days. And he says, well, how do I know? So that's another problem. If they're gonna take my word for it, 5 days, is he gonna go down and issue a citation? I don't think so. He wants proof to satisfy himself that it has been there for 5 days or X amount of days. The one trailer got moved a year before last is back there, it's been there for almost 2 weeks. He has no intention of moving it. I've had a lot of trailers moved. Most of the people in the neighborhood are going along with it, which I'm happy. But people can, I mean, I don't know. Everybody, well, like Mr. Laddie I talked to earlier, just on the way in here, he said it's pros and cons. Some people want it one way, some people want it another way. Well, I think most of the people move out here, especially my neighborhood, and the house just sells just like that, because it's a nice neighborhood. That's why they moved in there. So why not keep it nice? Right now, I got cars all over the place. I've got, well, one guy's putting up a new fence, coming off of Holly Road. You take a right, he lives right on a curb, there's a ranch right there. 2 vehicles parked right on the curb all the time. I've been walking around in the mornings, I used to, and mailman wouldn't even stop. He said, hey, I can't get to their mailbox. The heck with it. And then I have another one on Crestno going around the curve. This gentleman with a trailer parks in the street, and people across the street park in the street, and you gotta stop if the car's coming, which is, it happens a lot, because a lot of people like to cut through there instead of going out to Cook Road to Holly Road. They cut through there, and so you're waiting. Another thing, I've almost been hit head on coming off Holly Road into my subdivision, because there's a turn lane there in the medical places. My son's a police officer, and he was right behind me one day and said, Dad, he said, I thought you'd had it. Because 45 miles an hour, they zip out into the turn lane, and I'm right there, our other people are right there ready to, you know, they're parked, ready to wait in the turn. So can't do anything about that. But that's just something I want to throw in.
All right, well, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
we'll take all those comments under consideration and see what we
Well,
can do.
good luck. That's all.
Okay.
And thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for caring about your community enough to come and speak.
I do. I've been there for 32. I did tell you once that I left the garage door open, didn't
You left your garage door open?
I? Uh-huh.
Okay.
And the police officer stopped and left me a note. And I appreciated it, because I did forget it. And that was about 30 years ago.
I had the same thing happen when I was home.
But hey, I did, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
In cases like this where there's a petition signed to get something rolling, how does that work? I mean, does that have any effect?
I haven't seen any petition come to us, but Mr. Laddie?
Well, it's interesting because Mr. Brandon came sometime last year and made comments, although it sounds like it's gotten worse since then. But what happened was the board at the time referred the question, specifically the language in the zoning ordinance, to the planning commission to discuss and decide if they wanted to make some changes or recommend changes. And I think that they did take the question up, but they never forwarded us any feedback one way or the other. And so I think I don't know if the petition had any effect on the planning commission then or not, but we currently have regulations off the top of my head, I don't know what they are, but they're in effect, they're valid, and until it changes one way or the other, I think we've got to decide we need to enforce our ordinance as it's written, even though we know that a number of folks in that subdivision aren't in favor, and in fact, pursuant to the planning commission discussions, we have people coming in from other neighborhoods saying, we're in favor of it, we're against it. So it's a very interesting topic.
Well, as I knocked on doors, and it was a topic during the meeting with residents.
So just so I understand this, what happens is that a neighborhood or area might sign a petition, and then they would present that to a planning commission and ask them to take some kind of action on that.
Well, because this was a planning topic, and also the township board directed the planning commission to take it up, or asked them to take it up, then that would be the appropriate response to that case. If it's a criminal law or something, we could,
Yeah.
you guys would.
A question.
Yes.
But since that, Dave, we've initiated that ticket writing that our, because we didn't have that when he was first here, but
Right.
now we have, our
Does that
code person
change?
that can issue tickets,
Makes it a civil
and
infraction.
makes it a civil infraction.
It's a lot better, it's a
It's
lot
a lot
easier
better.
process, it's a lot more effective. Now, when you give someone a civil infraction, if they don't comply, then they could be looking at fines
Right.
from $100 up. But the point is, I think at this point in time, based on the inaction of the planning commission, is they weren't compelled one way or the other. And so we should probably, again, when we're at full strength with our code enforcement,
Right. But
consider.
my point was, with the code guy, we do have some action we can take now,
Yeah.
even if the planning commission doesn't do anything, because they can go out there and mark that tire. If it's more than 48 hours, they can give them a ticket, right?
Yeah. I'll have some
I did have a
suggestions
question,
too.
too. Oh, here, wait, you're talking. With the petition, do you have to have 50 or 51%, or is just?
No, this is just informal, this is just residents' thoughts. It was just a collection of people.
So
And we
then-
didn't, it didn't have any formal influence on them one way, on the planning commission one way or the other.
But it could.
As anybody's opinion could, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like some clarification, expounding on Mr. Al's question. I didn't quite understand what your answer was when he asked, what is the procedure for handling?
Changing the law.
Yes,
Well, the zoning ordinance is written by the planning commission. And
yes.
so if you want to change, if a resident, Mr. Brandon could petition he could file an application to change the zoning ordinance, the language of it if he wanted. But the planning commission they're usually very adept at studying issues, studying facts, and then creating the language to either amend or create some regulation. So they're the ones you talk to with zoning issues. We gave it to them on a platter and said, take a look at this, we've been hearing a lot of complaints. They did it, they bounced it back and forth, and they didn't reach consensus to change it one way or the other. And so that's normal procedure if you want to change the zoning ordinance. Usually, if we send something to them with a recommendation, they'll change the language, but I think they were literally unclear what direction to take, because there's such strong feelings one way or the other on the way our ordinance is written, that wasn't clear to them.
I guess my question is, does it come to the board first?
If they make a recommendation to change the language, then it would come to you. Now, there's also a way for you to change the language yourselves if you decide that you want to do that. You really essentially just take over the controls of the public hearing. You can refer to the planning commission if you want, you don't have to. You could do it all yourselves. Be unusual, but in this case, it wouldn't be as problematic because the planning commission passed on it.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll be glad, I was on the planning commission when we discussed it, and I'll be glad to share with you some information from that. Okay, with that, we'll move on to our first item on our agenda, which is future.
Mr. Chair, I think he still has some public comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
You must have recognized me from the last time I was here. I'm August Nines, and I live at 10653 Halsey Road. I was here a few weeks ago addressing this body here about this 911 emergency debacle that the Genesee County is mandating that each governing entity handle. Well, I'm here to inform you I made a mistake. The air is, I figured, too low. because the people are led to believe that it's per household. But it's per communication line. So in many homes, you take a four-person family, it's gonna be almost $9 a month. So taking that assumption, I conservatively estimate that it's gonna be 300,000 billable lines per month in Genesee County, which generates over $500,000 a month. And for the life of this proposal, at the end, it's going to generate over $26 million. Now, one of the commissioners informs me that it's only going to cost about $2 million for the county to upgrade their system. What happens to the other $24 million? Well, it's my understanding from this commissioner that it goes to the state. So is the county of Genesee collecting money for the state? It's so confusing. I'm not sure anybody knows what's going on. So I think you understand my feeling on this.
I'm not prepared this evening to go through all the numbers, but having attended a number of meetings for 911, I'm not defending or speaking against them. I have not heard that those kind of figures of the money being generated, but I'll give you one expense. Our police chief, Chief Wiles, can maybe support this, but I think we're looking at radios and equipment that they would provide to the municipalities, somewhere between $6 and $8 million of cost, at least for initial cost. I haven't heard that the money that we raise goes back to the state at all, but I don't know, Chief, have you heard any of that?
Yeah, I apologize, I can't speak to all the figures you put out, but I can speak to the cost of replacement of radios, and that's one of the things that I think that the surcharge increase wanted to accomplish, was to purchase new portable and mobile radios for law enforcement and fire services across the county, which would benefit the township and every other municipality within the county, and that's somewhere between $6 and $8 million to replace those radios. A handheld radio approximately costs around $5,000 to $6,000, depending on what things you get on it, what extras you get on it, and that's one of the things that the 911 Advisory Commission right now is trying to determine what would they want on it, should those funds become available to replace radios.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Chief, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Supervisor, Chief, the money doesn't revert back to the state. That stays into the 911 consortium coffer for the...
That is my understanding. I have not heard of any money, extra money going to the state.
Well, that's what I read. I'm sorry, Chief, but I know that's what I read in the mailers and everything else in support of it, but I haven't heard anything about it going back to the
I
state.
have not either.
Pardon me?
I have not either.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Ms. Massey?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a sort of a comment with a question. Based on the young man that gave his analysis of what may happen, so you start out with a surplus.
I haven't heard that.
Well, I'm just going off the numbers that he threw out there.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to
If
give
you
that.
are gonna collect that much money and you're only gonna spend, first year, 26 million in Genesee
No, it's
County?
26 million over the duration of the assessment. So it's supposed to go until, I think, 2022, and it would generate $26 million.
Oh,
There
okay.
was an article in the Flint Journal that said, mentioned major metropolitan areas would cost them from $5 to $7 million to upgrade their equipment.
Oh, okay.
And they also mentioned Dallas, and they said they explained a situation, a scenario that happened there, and it was the communication provider and understaffing. They said they were going to upgrade the staffing and upgrade the radios, and they were going to assess extra $2 million. I thought, gee, is Genesee County as big as Dallas? I don't think so. So
Okay.
it's
Ms. Massey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Chair, and to the board. I am Linda Riles Massey, and I live at 2272 Lake Ridge Drive. My comments have to do with our water rate increases. In the recent days, there have been a lot of articles and comments about whatever is going on in Flint with their continuing to stay with the GLWA versus the KWA. I looked at our bills, and since 2014, the township residents have had 4 water rate increases. We have gone from $5.27 per 100 cubic feet in 2014 to $7 in current day. I did the math, might be a little bit rusty, but that equates to about 25%. That is extremely high. And I started to think that with Flint possibly not continuing and being a part of the KWA, somebody has to pick up that projected loss of revenue. My question is, will the county have to absorb that loss? And if they do, will there be a vote coming from this body? Now, if there is a vote, I ask that each of you please think about the residents, not look at any personal political agendas, but consider the effect on the residents within Grambling Township. Personally, I did not think the KWA was a good idea to begin with, given that the county at that time had some financial issues. Flint certainly had some financial issues. And with a decrease in population, trying to build a pipeline made no sense to me at all. So what I'm asking is that if there is a vote from Grambling Township on the Water Advisory Committee, I did speak with the Drain Commissioner's office and found that our former supervisor was on that committee. Please consider the long-term impact on the residents, because any savings that might be generated through the KWA probably will not be realized in our lifetimes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. We'll try and get some additional information maybe, and we'll be discussing, I'm sure, water here in the near future. Any other public comment?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Please give us your name and address.
My name is Melinda Schubert, and my address is 10055 South Saginaw. I live in Grambling Township. I am one of the people that has been affected by the project that was built at the Oaks, and my backyard is a lake. And I am here to say thank you to the people that have helped me in these last years. Some people are gone, but I especially thank Scott. He has been very helpful. And I know I've talked to several of you, so if the Oaks is going to do any kind of projects to get this water out of this land behind me, I would appreciate you to facilitate whatever they need quickly. I have contacted everyone. I've contacted the Trilogy, who owns the Oaks. They have not returned my calls in 2 days, though. This land was not wet before. It was dry land. And it became 6 foot deep over the Easter weekend. So I would like to know what you guys plan on doing. I have contacted everybody I can possibly contact. I've contacted Genesee County Drain Commission. I've contacted you, this office. I've contacted Trilogy. I've contacted the engineers from the beginning of that project to the new one that they hired last fall. So I've done my best. So now I would like to find out, do you have any answers for me? Because this is a real health issue with all this standing water back there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could you give us a little background for the new board members like myself? Because I'm not sure what the Oaks are, and where exactly is your house located at?
We're on Saginaw Street,
Between,
Baldwin. It's right south of Baldwin.
okay,
On the same side as, it's on the east side.
okay.
The Oaks is a building that came in behind my property, and it's assisted living nursing home facility, you know now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, all of that land behind there was all dry before that. And as soon as they started that project, they have dug up a drain system, they've dug up the land, altered the land, and all the water comes down there.
All the tiles and.
Well, just, okay, I'll give you a little bit of a snapshot of this.
Okay.
And Melinda and I have talked numerous times over the holiday weekend. And,
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank
But,
you.
and we've been in contact with the county. Surface water is something that the county actually takes care of. We have sanitary sewers and we have water we provide to residents. As far as surface water, like storm water, that's actually a county issue. And so we've been in contact with the drain commissioner's office. Apparently, I don't know, Dennis, maybe you can help fill in any of the spots I may not be aware of, but I had heard that there's a possibility that when the Oaks was built, there was some old, Jeff Wright, our drain commissioner, will tell you that this land used to be all swamp. And the only way that they drained it was they put tiles in everywhere and drained the property to various creeks and drains. A drain being like a ditch, Thread Creek is a drain. And so basically the water was all drained to those. Those tiles, when they get disrupted, nobody knows, where they were because there's no mapping for them. That water has to go somewhere. And so there's the feeling that possibly one of those or several of those were disturbed when the Oaks was built. I think, did they tell you that they were going to put in a drain to move some of that water off the parking lot
Yes,
and
they
take it
did.
to a drain?
A 10-inch drain, they did say they were gonna do that, but
But we haven't
they
seen
haven't
it.
done that in years. And just a little background on that, this was, when he's talking about these tiles, this was years ago. This land has been dry for many, many years. This is nothing new, and it wasn't, it was not wet before, and he's talking about wetlands, no, or swampland, no.
Yeah, no, I'm
This was
talking
many,
general.
many years ago.
Yeah, Earl said that they used to park their cars.
Yes.
The Buick
Open, no, that was
Marshalls
an
used to park in
official
that lot. I used to park
parking
in that lot.
Yes.
When I say drain this area, I'm talking about the entire Genesee County, not necessarily her property.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
No,
I just wanted to make that clear for him.
yeah. So
Yes.
I don't have any answers for you tonight, what we're going to do, because it's actually a county issue, but, I assure you that, we'll continue to follow up with the county. They haven't filed for any permits that I'm aware of. When I checked to see if, they filed for any permits to put in drains or what have you, but Mr. Lehman, do you have any input on it, or?
Part of the issue, last year we sent a mowing crew out there so they could
Yes.
mow it all through, and then they tried to find if we could maybe locate the broken tile. And sometimes these things just collapse, they're 80 years old, they're under the ground, they break, and you can't find them. There's no mapping, we don't know where they are. So the only thing we can do is, we sent a crew out there to mow it, and so that they would be able to get the engineers out there to see if they could, in any way, shape, or form, locate where this may be and be able to fix just a broken tile that would allow the water to start to flow again instead of backing up. There was no way to locate it, unfortunately, and so, again, this isn't the, unfortunately, only instance in the township of flooding issues. And we try to help out where we can, but our hands are tied. We don't have the ability to force the Genesee County Drain Commission to do anything. It's totally up to them. The alternatives available to you guys would be to start to initiate an entire stormwater ordinance, but be careful what you wish for, because we have a tremendous amount of flooding throughout the entire community. If you were to put a stormwater ordinance, by the time you got it together and you started to do this, it would require putting some pretty massive assessments onto property owners in order to fix these drainage issues. And if you are in that drainage district, you will get assessed and it could be thousands of dollars, it could be $25,000 each to fix a drainage issue. So there's some concern about jumping into it without studying it very carefully. On the other hand, it would give you some local control over these flooding issues. But you may have residents here saying, what do you mean you're going to charge me $25,000 to fix flooding? I don't flood over here, it's my neighbor who floods, and I've seen that happen. So we continue to work with the Drain Commission and let them know when we see these spots, but we really have a hard time with it because we don't have any ability to hold their feet to the fire on fixing these issues. As much as we can try to be a conduit, continue to let them know that if there's an issue that we're really petitioning them. But if you guys recall, one that we did with the layman drain just recently, and then that petition, and we get assessed as a municipality, and we don't have a say in it either. We just get a bill for $90,000 from the drain commissioner that says, we're fixing the layman drain, and here's your $90,000 bill. Appreciate it if you could pay it today. And that's just, it's how it works.
So the drain commission will take action, but they will also charge everybody in that area if they do come out and they find that it's something that they are responsible for. So I guess, I would continue to contact Trilogy and make sure that they're following through on that and the county.
Okay.
And I'll talk to Mark Young as well, and as I am, and see what we can do.
I appreciate that you said that about the drain tile, but this was not an issue until they started that project. So I can't believe that, a drain tile broke, and that's why I have 6-foot water.
Well, it could have broke because of the construction.
Right.
It also
And it could have broke, and it
just
could have
because
also because they dug it off.
It broke because it's old. But it could have, absolutely been from that construction. It's not that they didn't have a concept of where their water was going to drain off. I mean, they had the soil erosion permit from the county approved it and said, yes, you have a plan in place, but somehow during that construction, the biggest problem is no one knows where these tiles exist. There's just no record of them. So unfortunately, when they go in there and start excavating, it absolutely could have broke a tile. So there's tiles that are draining away from the side of the oaks and that should be draining from your backyard. And it stops right behind there, and all the water is going to back up, unfortunately, and you got the lowest spot out there. So
That property used to be a cornfield. I mean, it was farmed. And as you know, it was a Buick Open official parking lot. That was not wet. You wouldn't be parking your cars in there.
Well, I got stuck in there a couple times.
Well, you might have
We
got
appreciate
stuck
it.
in
Well, here
there.
again, that's when it rained really bad at the open.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate where you're at on this, and
Okay, well,
I'll continue
I
to
really
work on it.
do want to know, I mean,
I would suggest maybe even going to the county board meeting and talking to them. because
Okay,
they actually
I'll
have
do that.
They have jurisdiction over the surface water.
because I've talked to them and they say it's not their responsibility either. So, I mean, they say they don't have anything there, they just got a ditch. So, nobody's taking responsibility for this.
Well, maybe, let's talk, and maybe you and I have a meeting with somebody there.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and if you have any ideas or you need any information, I have everybody's phone number, believe me. I've called them,
I'm
so.
serious, I'll be glad to meet with you with the drain commission.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Okay, we appreciate our residents bringing issues to our attention, that's definite. Okay, moving on to our future positioning on our agenda. The board will consider the development of our strategic agenda, consideration given to ranking topics by importance. So anyways, we wanted to focus on the future of where we're spending our time as a township board. And we assembled a list of a variety of items that our board members submitted. And everybody was sent a result, and it's in our packet. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to address these in specific order of the priority that they were ranked, but I think we have a good idea of what the top 10 issues are. And I don't know, Dennis, do you have any comment on any of these? Or?
You know what, the whole point is being able to develop that strategic agenda for what the board wants to focus on for the next coming months in your future positioning. So what we have is we have 10, actually there's a tie for 10, so there's 11 issues on here. Trustee Mansor did force rank it with point value, and I can print that out and give you guys all a copy of that, but it's clear that some of the items will probably be addressed out of order of importance just because they come up sooner. And although if you look at our top 2, it was really Parks and Recreation and Fire Protection, both of which are before you in the next couple of months. Fire Protection being Thursday night with the kickoff of the joint meeting with the City Council, and then we did meet with the Mayor and City Manager earlier today, and they discussed setting the meeting potentially in June to kick off the meeting in regards to Parks and Recreation and start to foster some of those conversations. But the goal was really to develop a list of what kind of topics you guys wanted to see in that future positioning portion of your agenda, so that we have the opportunity to try to gather as much information as possible and provide you with that before these come up. I don't think that you'll solve a lot of these in one 20-minute session and discussion. I think that some of these are going to obviously be ongoing. It may meet over the course of 3 meetings or 4 meetings or however long it takes to address some of the issues. But really, this is your opportunity to kind of go through and take a look at where the rankings were, what the ones that were important, and I mean, in order, Parks and Rec, fire protection, streets and roads, tech village, business attractiveness assessment, planning and zoning issues, zip code issues, attracting restaurants and retail, the appearance of Grand Blanc Township, and a tie for Perry House issues, and discussion about DPW, water, sewers, and drains, which obviously is kind of topical last week. Bring up drains and some water concerns with residents. So those kind of rounds out your top 10 list of items, and then I leave it to you guys to determine when do you want to see them on the upcoming agendas.
Mr. Supervisor, some of the items that were mentioned, we have commissions on, right? Parks and Rec and Fire and Planning, Zoning, et cetera. For the ones that we don't have specific, and we also have obviously kind of energy around the tech village topic. But for the other ones, streets and roads, business attractiveness, zip code, et cetera, what is the approach that we would take to actually get a group of people kind of centered around that and providing some thoughts and ideas?
Part of my thought, and actually spoke with our superintendent today about it, is having a business roundtable where we bring in, and I've talked to a number of business leaders in our community, or business owners, about the idea of coming together and talking about, what are some of the hurdles that maybe they see currently, or what we can do to streamline the process for new development or existing business to be able to expand, and to bring people in and discuss those issues, and at least as part of the process. So I think part of what this list does is it doesn't mean that we've got the answer for how we're going to solve them, but it means that we're going to focus as a board on how do we, and I don't pretend that this board has all the answers for these either. It may mean bringing in somebody to talk to us about the issue, or it may mean us going and visiting a community that has resolved some of these issues and see how they do it.
So could I just suggest maybe we decide at some point, if we have 3 or 4 of these that don't have natural owners, that we come up with some type of a group, a working team that we would nominate to work on the topic, maybe come back in a month or 2 or something like that with some thoughts and analysis and recommendation.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Lehman.
In my prior township, the board members each kind of selected a passion project or whatever, the ones that they were the most interested in, or 1 or 2, and it may be 2 people, it could be 3, it could be 1. But if you have one person that is very interested or engaged or passionate about that project, that tends to keep it in the forefront. And some of these might take you 4 years to work on, but if you solve an issue in 4 years, and that's a legacy like you left behind, that's a really nice legacy to have. You addressed some of the top 10 issues, you decided that you were going to address them, and then you worked out, and at the end, when you walk away in 4 years, or if you run again, but it's being able to say as a group, here's what we accomplished. We put our strategic agenda together. These were the items that we heard from our constituents were important, and these are the ones that we were able to address. So I will throw that suggestion out there for the board to consider.
All right, any other discussion? Otherwise, we'll move forward and make sure we have these on our future agendas. Yes, Slane?
Mr. Bennett, I would be willing to let the board know that I've taken on the streets. So if you have questions on streets and how we're handling them and who's wanting them, I'll be glad to. The complaints, the questions, Mr. Laddie was saying, he left here after our executive staff meeting. He had 1 phone call from me when he got there and followed up by 4 emails today. And those were follow-ups to questions I had in trying to resolve questions. So when we have when Mr. Laddie and I are going to be experts on this, we'll be glad to share it.
Okay.
Smile, you're on camera.
Streets and roads. Next item on the agenda is the board will consider developing a policy regarding street light conversion from mercury vapor to high-pressure sodium lighting to LED lighting throughout the township. All of you received the packet. Anybody have any concerns, or I made a copy actually of the packet.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Lane.
I could summarize it since I got the packets. And number one, Consumer Energy several months ago sent us a list of mercury vapor, high-pressure sodium, and LED lights. And they provided us with the cost. They are going around when they burn out lights and at no cost to us putting in high-pressure sodium. But if we decide to go to LED lights in the future, there's a big cost after that. Right now, they're offering us a bargain, $75 for the 123 mercury lights that are on our major roads. And for the $9,900, they will change those out to LED, so you'll have a chance to see what an LED looks like. But it's cheaper than going to the high sodium first. So I
Couple of
think it's
things.
a bargain.
A couple of things. One is they did change the price a little bit from the original. Number two, the thing that I'm wary of whenever we're just kind of making spot decisions is it, how does it play into our overall plan? And similar to Ms. Massey's comment about the water, I'd rather look at the whole picture and not just pay these 120 lights. And so, two things. One is, all of us have bought a printer, right? We find the printer is dirt cheap, but the ink for it is a fortune. These lights, are inexpensive compared to what, we looked at earlier, but I'm not sure what the electricity rate is. And so, you look through the packet that I handed out, and everybody received this, but I made a few highlights in it. One of the things I'm looking at this afternoon that came to my attention is that on the third page, you'll see general service unmetered lighting rate, GUL. Okay? And then you turn a couple more pages to the next section is the same thing, general service unmetered lighting rate, GUL.
Mr. Chairman, the unmetered lighting rate is the cheapest Consumer Energy offers to
So
municipalities.
you go to the following page, and it's general unmetered experimental lighting rate. Okay, so it's experimental lighting rate.
What does that mean, Mr. Chairman?
I have no idea, but, and then number 6, on the following page, you'll see that we're committing to those 2 different rate levels. And then you go again to number 7 on the next page, it has those 2 rates. I emailed everybody an article from Ann Arbor, and then you'll see on the last couple pages, a few more highlighted sections, or another highlighted section of that experimental lighting rate. You'll see that the city of Ann Arbor actually, when they went to LED, they found that their rate increased for the electricity because the utility needed to make up what they said was a loss in their fees because they were saving money on the electricity. I know they have some estimated savings on their plan that they give us as a proposal, but that's not part of the agreement, that's just part of the proposal. But I would say, it probably is a good deal to try this, but I would want to make a contingent on knowing what those electricity rates are, to know whether or not we're going to be paying more after we sign this agreement and go with LED than what we're paying now. I guess know what those 2 rates are, the experimental and the other rate, the unmetered GUL. But I would also, I know it's on our list of strategic issues to cover. The other article I sent you was, we paid about $30,000 to have an engineering study done for our water tank before we had painted. And, it's probably good planning to do that kind of thing, to see, what kind of materials we need to replace, what have you. I'd like us to consider down the road, and I've left a message with Row Engineering. I saw that Ann Arbor is doing something similar or did, to take a look at their lighting, see what the cost savings potentially would be. Because you see on the cover page that the potential cost if we were to change out all of our lights would be about $250,000. We pay about $24,000 a month, is that correct, Dennis, for electricity? And so I think what we need to look at is a plan for looking at our electricity usage in the township, that kind of expense. A lot of that expense is charged off to our individual neighborhoods by special assessment districts for lighting. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't try and save our residents some money, even though they're footing the bill. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to make decisions on their behalf. Yes, Mr. Kent?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Laddie, a couple of points. One, Supervisor Bennett just brought up, Mr. Laddie, that if we undergo the capital piece, that's out of general fund. But the resident's assessment is to pay the bill, right? So if that rate were to go down, and I'm not rate, but the usage fee, it looks like if you look at the LED versus the sodium vapor, it's about half, roughly, maybe a little less in some cases. But the township doesn't realize that, it strictly would be a resident saving, right?
Well, these are not residential necessarily.
Oh, these are
these
okay,
are some of the primary.
because this is just
Primary,
just primary, that's right. Okay, so that would maybe reflect in our bill, though, right?
Correct, but when you if you get into a situation where you're converting lights that are part of assessment district, then
Yes.
exactly what you described.
Okay, so there's kind of two scenarios there, right?
And as far as the capital cost for that, I would imagine that would be borne by the special assessment district.
It would need to be.
Right. So just then the last comment would be that, based on what you indicated in one of the other communities where they, I could see our bill going from 24,000, now that's, if it went to 12,000, let's just say hypothetically,
Right.
because if the usage is half, you would think it would be, right? But then they increase the rate per watt, per kilowatt hour, to make up for the $12,000 they lost, and all we did was lay out capital for no gain in cost.
Right. That's what I want to make sure.
So that's what I'm saying, I think we need more information on this, I really do.
Mr. Mansur?
Yeah, I would agree, in looking at the package over the weekend and doing some additional analysis, and actually reading what's the rest of the information that was provided as part of the board package. What we have in front of us to convert everything is an 8.8-year payback on this $250,000. And if we look at the SEMRECO analysis that was included, the return that other communities are getting is 3.7 years. So for some reason, this particular proposal, as it's developed, has more than double the amount of required payback time. I can't understand how, for our residents, that would make any sense for us. So maybe there is something in this proposal that's different than the ones that other communities are getting, and we ought to look at that. But 8.8 years is a very long payback.
With that return on investment too, one of the critical parts, Mr. Mansur, on that is that the technology for LED is changing so rapidly that we want to make sure that the return on investment is shorter than what, because otherwise we may have old technology before we even pay for it. Yes,
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
It's my understanding, though, reading through the packet also, is that we're looking at special assessments, i.e. neighborhood subdivisions. Don't they have to change the fixtures and?
Right now we're just looking at the primary, but.
No, but maybe that has something to do with 8.8 years, and
But
that's what I would assume.
the other communities probably would do something similar. With the LED, keeping them cool. The other thing is, one thing that we haven't discussed, but with LED, the power, how clean the power is really matters. And it actually will determine the life of the LED. And so, for example, in Frankenmuth, they end up putting power scrubbers on their lines. They own and operate their own lights in Frankenmuth. And they actually cleaned up the power because they found that they were going through a lot of LED product just because of the power fluctuations. You don't have that with our current lighting, but so it's a factor. Yes?
I just had a question. Do they have LED lights at all in Genesee County, or is this the first one?
Good question, I don't know that.
I'm sorry, the arches downtown, we switched those to LED 8 years ago now, the historic community did.
Which arches are those?
Down City of Grand Lane?
No, the arches in downtown.
Oh, the arches of downtown
Yeah,
place.
the
So that's the
historic.
only LED?
No, Fenton, city of Fenton has some too, not the township, the city.
Someone doubt that the city of Grand Blanc, those, I would think those stanchion lights downtown might be LED, I'm not sure. They're
Maybe
fairly
we should
new.
talk to them also.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
what is the outcome if we do nothing?
Mr. Lehman?
One of the things we're gonna switch from mercury vapor regardless. I mean, as these mercury vapors go out and consumers' energy has to come in and update, they will. They will update to high-pressure sodium at absolutely no cost to the township. So if you do nothing, they will make the conversion to high-pressure sodium, and that doesn't cost you anything. However, if you then go to convert from those high-pressure sodium to LED at a later date, there's a very significant cost increase attached with it. So that's one of the things why they want to know, and it was before you, is switching from mercury vapor to LED on that chart that was on there. If you look at like a 100-watt light, that's 8222 per light. If you switch from high-pressure sodium to LED for the same 100 watts, it's $619.22 per light. So they'll come in and switch you to high-pressure sodium because mercury vapor is outmoded and they can't fix it, they're not going to replace it. They'll replace it with high-pressure sodium at no cost. So you just have to be prepared that if we do nothing, they'll convert it to high-pressure sodium. That's what most of the majority of lights that we have in the township are already high-pressure sodium. You don't get the energy savings that you would with LED. You don't get the light that you get with LED.
One thing I'm not clear on this is the 132 lights, do those have to be changed out right now, or is that how many need required, or how many do they need? Kathy?
What we're doing is we're agreeing to change them out, and we will be sending a check if you approve this motion tonight, so they can change out those 132 lights. Then you have on your major thoroughfares some examples to residents and ourselves as to what the value is. I've also asked, well, I hate expanding this discussion beyond this $9,900 because I don't think it's a wise choice to, when they give us an offer of $75 a unit to do it, maintain them and no problems, why you would want to take the interim high-pressure sodium and go to a more expensive conversion to LED. So that's the only thing I want to discuss tonight, because that's the decision tonight. The rest of it, sure, we can go ahead and study it, then we'll have some LED lights on our main thoroughfare that you can evaluate. Consumer Energy is going to maintain them if our rates are going down, and all of this is for governmental units. We have the lowest rate that Consumer Energy offers anybody. They're not metered. And so, to me, this is a win-win situation for these 132 lights. It gives us a start towards whatever kind of future you want to look at. And when you get down to residential lights, where in my subdivision, we paid for running the electricity, buying the poles, erecting the poles, paying our bills on our December tax bill, you come to me and ask me if I want to pay more again for new poles and everything, which is what would be required in my neighborhood. That's a future decision. Tonight's decision is just on 132 lights on our major roads, saving us from expending hundreds of more dollars to try these LED lights, and Consumer Energy is going to maintain them, just like they are right now. But if you don't make the decision tonight, every time a mercury burns out, you won't pay anything. But when we want to go to an LED light, you already know it's going to be hundreds of dollars more.
Is that a motion?
Well, I have a question
Sure, Mr. Massey.
for the clerk. What is the cost for going to changing the 132 lights?
It's
$75
each, times 132.
It's $9,900.
It's $9,900.
Check on page number.
Right. The bill is in
Number
the
2,
packet.
Joe, on page number 2, we can look at where that's at. If you look at in the blue section there at the top, you'll see the 10,000, that actually was reduced to 9,000.
Oh, okay,
But you'll see the amount down below,
okay.
mercury vapor to LED, you'll see
Yeah.
the amount per,
There is an actual bill that I
Right.
have from Consumer Energy if you sign the documents. So,
yeah.
Yes. So the way that the topic was presented on the agenda, it makes it look like it's an entire package. Being able to separate the two between just replacing the necessary, apparently necessary 132 mercury vapor going to LED has the 1-year payback.
yes.
And it seems that from the research that would be a good deal. And as Clerk Lane says, it at least gives us a chance to test it out and try it. But doing the entire grouping here for this $250,000 doesn't make sense to me because of the.
That was not the information I received from Consumer Energy. It was just for the 132 light fixtures that are mercury vapor.
So I would propose, make a motion.
So it sounds like,
I have one question.
sure,
Good job. Mr. Chair,
yes.
I have a question for a legal opinion. What happens if we do nothing tonight?
Well, they have wanted you to weigh in on what conversion process you want. And I think under the terms of the agreement, I think we're obligated to give them a response, if not tonight, very soon. Because they need to know how to handle these lights that burn out, if they're gonna put in the high pressure sodium LED. So I think you can put this off a bit, but you're gonna have to give them direction on the current status of the lights.
I read the information that was sent out, and I would like to at least table this until the next meeting.
Well, I'm hearing a couple of different things. Let me just kind of summarize. I'm hearing that we need to do something on this. The LED sounds like it's the way to go. I don't think anybody's questioning LED is the route to go. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you're
We got
correct on
consensus on that. I think, the only question for me is on the rate. And I would be okay with approving, and I'm not sure if you would be, Mr. Massey, but contingent upon knowing what that rate is before and after we, what these two rates are that we're committing to. Yeah, I understand, as Clerk Lane says, they're telling us it's their lowest governmental rate, but I would like to actually see what that rate is before and after, because we have seen some examples of municipality that found out after the fact that wasn't the case. So I guess I would be okay. I don't know if everybody else is, but Mr. Kent, or I'm sorry, Kent, Mr. Jones?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion that we invest the funds for the 132 lights at a cost of $9,900, not to exceed the $9,900, as long as contingent with your signature with checking the rates.
Second.
Oh, was there a second?
Okay. All right, Mr. Massey or Ms. Lane, I think you had your hand up.
Is it significant, I think tomorrow, within a few days, I can get the rates from the people that I have a good communication with.
Perfect. Perfect.
When they're saying it's the unmetered rate and it's nothing less.
Let's
So
get it
if I
right.
get
Right.
all
I'd
right,
like it
in an
right.
email,
Yes.
is an email sufficient?
Before and after.
My motion states with your signature and Clerk Lane's.
Mr. Massey, does that address your concern? Or?
Yes, but I have a question.
Okay.
I'd like for the attorney to weigh in on, is an email efficient?
For committing them to their rate?
Yes,
Oh, I think it is.
okay.
Phone call, I trust that.
Okay.
Email's better than the phone.
All right,
Oh,
so we
no,
have a
I'll trust
motion-
the phone
We have a
call.
motion and a second.
No,
Any
no.
more discussion?
I think we have pretty much consensus on where we're
We
going.
have a motion.
Dennis?
Okay. All in
Yes.
favor?
Or you?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, our next item on our agenda is operational issues. And our operations are headed up by our superintendent. And so the board will consider requested wage adjustment for the administrative assistant to the police department, Ms. Sherry Potter. Mr. Limata, would you like to start out discussion on this?
I would love to. You have a request before you this evening from the police chief, Ron Wiles, and I think it was pretty self-explanatory. He is asking for an increase up to the rate of $26.24 per hour from her current rate of $24.08. He does give you several factors on what that was based upon, and it would be considered a equity increase, as happens from time to time, to bring somebody up to a internal or external comparable market rate. And I believe that's what, the gist of his conversation here is that that's what he's looking for, is to make it compatible with the with increases that were given out in December to two others that she used to be tied together with. In 2013, the then current board made a motion so that administrative assistant Potter would also be getting the same rate increases as union representatives, so the deputy treasurer and deputy clerk on August 1st, when the AFSCME units increases went through each and every year. It came to light, I think after that, when the board, which is their right, set the compensation separately for the deputy treasurer and deputy clerk, that the three-legged stool there that used to be all together from a board motion that we're going to get their increases set on August 1st, suddenly there was only one less standing, and I think the request came about because does that still apply to her? Does it still apply to the other two deputies that were included? And we have clouded the water since then because there's another administrative assistant who works for Scott and I, and there is a HR generalist who's also a contracted employee who is non-represented. So we actually have more people out there. So for your consideration, I thought that Chief Wiles put together a pretty good case about the way the command structure has changed, the additional work that she put on, and where he was basing his increase on. He is here this evening and he is prepared to answer any questions that the board may have.
Would you like to hear?
Is there a way that, because we're talking about other people, just not the chief's administrative assistant, because we're discussing salaries about the deputies, can we move this to executive session?
Actually, interesting question. I believe it's at the employee's discretion.
Well,
I don't have a problem with this, I just don't want to discuss the deputies.
Well, it's all public information.
It is. The salaries for the positions is public information, and there wouldn't really be a solid basis for you to go into executive session. But if we move into an employee's performance, then that employee has the right to be present and has the right to ask to go into executive session. If the employee doesn't, if the employee whose performance is being discussed doesn't want to go into executive session, then we can't go. So I think, Mr. Thomas, you have an excellent point. I don't think that this discussion needs to necessarily involve the performance of other employees, because if it does, then they need to be invited and they need to be able to go into executive session. I think you'll only be needing to discuss that, though, from a comparative standpoint for the salaries. And so I guess we'll have to see where the discussion goes, but we're not capable of doing that tonight if we're going to talk about the deputy clerk or the treasurer or anybody else that's employed.
So basically, the topic of performance isn't our discussion. It's
not if we're going to compare performance of other employees, then they need to be here. If we're going to talk about what the deputy treasurer does and how she does her, not necessarily her job description, but her performance. Same thing with the deputy clerk performance, then they need to be invited to participate. If we're going to talk about Ms. Potter's performance, then she has the right to ask for a closed session.
My quandary is when we, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Mr. Supervisor,
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
My quandary is that when we discussed the deputies' salaries, we did that in closed door session, that's why.
We were talking about each deputy's performance and their particular duties. And if we're going to talk about Ms. Potter's performance, then we'll need to engage in a potentially an executive
Take
session.
one more question and then we're going to go into the chief. Ms. Lane?
Mr. Laddie, I think there was a slight difference of opinion on why we went into executive session for both the deputy treasurer and the deputy clerk. and that was to discuss their contracts.
Well, that's
Because
correct.
we did not discuss performance, and that was how I understood we went into executive session. And at this point, there is no contract before us. And that, it's simply a wage change,
Yes.
but no
Well,
contract.
that's a good point.
And Ms. Potter did not have a contract, does not have a contract as of this moment.
Well, I think the request, at least the discussion with Superintendent Lehman, was that we would create a contract, because she's, I think, the last employee, frankly, that doesn't have a contract. If those contract terms are different than her current compensation package, then we would basically be negotiating a contract that wouldn't just have to do with the setting of the salary for position, and we arguably could go into closed session for that topic. But the contract that you're going to see, I think, is going to look just like your deputy treasurer's contract.
I'd like to allow our police chief to speak to the issue, and welcome.
Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has. I guess, let me start by saying I wouldn't have proposed this adjustment if it wasn't deserving. And I based it, like the letter states out, on several factors: her years of service here, her outstanding performance at the police department. She plays a key role in the success of the police department and with the community. The additional responsibilities, being shorthanded in our command structure right now, also plays a role, and the internal comparables with the other non-represented employees play a role. I think all those factors, when you look at all of them, they support their requested increase in front of you today. It's important, I think, to understand that I think sometimes when you see administrative assistant, you think secretary. And Sherry Potter isn't a secretary. She has so many additional roles that make her much more than that. She is the police department's FOIA coordinator. And that sounds good on paper. What's the FOIA coordinator do? At the police department, we received last year 500 FOIAs. 500 FOIAs. Over 200 of those required more than just, I need a copy of your police report. They needed multiple reports. They needed redactions. They needed videos. They needed this and that. That is extremely time consuming. When we looked at our FOIAs coming from the previous years, there was an increase every year, and this year we're on pace to be about 500 FOIAs for the year as well. She also manages all the MCOL's annual registration each year. MCOL's, which is our governing licensing body, requires all police officers to be licensed and their information updated. She handles that information. She also coordinates all our grant activity and reports that to the state for reimbursement. She also does all of our accounts payable, all of the scheduling of the community room, all of the scheduling and accommodations of our training for 41 sworn officers, 10 civilian officers. That is an enormous amount of training that she is responsible for on schedules and maintains records for that. She maintains the records for all the police department, whether it's personnel files, disciplinary files, lawsuit files, master forms. All of that stuff is on her plate. A lot of that stuff was additional, not stuff that she was doing before. Currently, it is myself and Captain Matt Bauserman in the command structure. At one time, we had a chief, 2 captains, 2 lieutenants. We don't have that. It's been budgeted this year for an additional lieutenant that we're in the process of trying to fill, and hopefully I can bring you that in the near future when that process is played out. But as of right now, in all of 2016, we don't have that. It's myself and Captain Bauserman and Sherry. We would not be as successful as we are as a police department without her. It's just that simple. What she brings to the table, what she does for this police department is not something you can replace. When I became the chief a year ago, I looked at the police department and looked at responsibilities. Who would be responsible for what, who would do what, who would be in what position. One of the best decisions I made was leaving her where she was. Moving her from that position would have been very detrimental to the police department and the fine service, level of service that we strive to give our community. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You have some additional projects that are coming up, the accreditation. I don't know if you want to speak about what that involves.
We do. The accreditation project, I was going to come to you and discuss that with you, and because I'd like to get buy-in for the board. Financially, it's not a buy-in financially, but in theory, I would like the board from the very top, the very down to the line officer, civilian employee at the police department to have ownership in this accreditation process. The accreditation process is brand new through the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police, the MACP. It's a brand-new process to law enforcement in the state of Michigan where law enforcement agencies would be bound by 103 standards. Those standards require a lot of work to get the department up to that level. Years ago, the new board members may not know, but some of the older board members may know, we were CLIA recognized, which was an accreditation process, a national accreditation process. They priced themselves out of the market when the economy went bad. We just couldn't afford to do it anymore. The goal is to be the first police department in Genesee County to be accredited through the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. That's the goal. And with the work that Mrs. Potter's going to do on that, I think we're going to achieve that goal. Without her on that project, it's just that simple, we won't. She was a driving force behind the CLIA recognition and accreditation, and she will be here. She'll be the go-to person in that process because she has the skill, the knowledge, and the ability to do that. So that'll be a huge task on her, time-wise and work-wise. But talking to her, she's up for the task, and I know she'll come through with flying colors.
Chief, I personally worked with Mrs. Potter on the K-9 programs and the fundraisers, and she's done a phenomenal job helping out the community. Plus, she's really, really well thought of in my other chief polices. I was so pleasantly surprised that they said, geez, boy, I hope we could just snag her and bring her into our fold. So I'm glad you're here. I really am. And I personally appreciate the hard work you do with the community.
Ms. Lane?
Mr. Chairman, this particular raise would put her significantly higher than my deputy. And when you look at state law.
Let me ask a question, is that something we should be, I just want to get a legal opinion before we go on.
Well, yeah, we don't want to be comparing the performance.
I'm not preparing,
Okay.
I'm not going to deal with
That's why we
performance.
should be an exec.
I am not dealing with performance. Under state law, the only employees that are mandated in townships are the township board, whether it's 5 or 7 members, your deputy clerk, and your deputy treasurer because of their responsibilities under state law.
They're the only ones that what?
Are mandated that you must fill when you are a township board. Every other employee is at the need of serving your public. And when someone,
Deputies are too, though, aren't they?
but they are also serving the public, but they serve at the elected officials' premise. If Earl and I would not have won our elections, those people would be out and could be out any time during any 4-year period, but definitely could be out, not by their choice, every 4 years when there's a change. All of our unrepresentative employees, which have now been increased by 2 additional people, don't have that same out the door. You've got reasonable things you have to do. And so, although I'm willing to give her a raise, I am not willing to pay the price that you have put on this, because it even exceeds my deputy.
If I can just address that, because when I was trying to come up with a number, I did take that in consideration. And I think there are some differences that the board needs to be aware of in that particular situation. Sherry Potter's an 18-year employee of the township. I don't believe the deputy clerk is. Also, she is working in excess of 40 hours a week, 80 hours a pay period, which I don't know if the deputy clerk is currently. So I think those are some key differences when we're talking about wages and compensation for employees. And I took that into consideration when I tried to come up with this number to her adjustment in her salary.
Mr. Massey?
Chief, I think you've done an outstanding job for the short time that you have held the position. And I think the community respect your decisions that you made up until this point. And I think the community would be outraged if they knew that this board made a decision in any way to degrade the police department. And suddenly we started having problems because we did not honor a request to move the police department forward. And I have confidence in the chief that he's absolutely right. I think everyone deserves a decent increase. And based on what he has said about the employee, she has done an outstanding job. She's worked overtime, and I have experienced that. You work in long hours, you're not getting paid for those hours most of the time, because I'll say this, if she is getting paid, she's not getting paid what she's worth to the police department. So I am for the $26 an hour increase, up to $26 an hour increase. Now, I'm not here to compare the assistant to anyone else. This stands on its own merit. We can't get into the situation where we keep going back trying to compare someone else to someone else. That's childish, in my opinion. We got to keep it at a level playing field, okay? The chief has presented the case, and most of us, I think, likes the case because of the chief's record. I go on the chief's record. Even before I became a trustee, I didn't really know the chief that well, but I saw his works out in the community. That's what I based my decision on. Not the chief as a personally, okay, but his works justify to me what he wants. So I'm willing to give you whatever you want.
Mr. Mansour?
So, if I could just direct it.
Sure, absolutely.
First let me go to the end of the table here. Mr. Lima, it's been clear, definitely unfortunately, that we have a series of employees working for different parts of the organization that are tied together. And if that is really the case, then when we're considering wages for one, we ought to be considering them together. So I think that would kind of help all of us get a better understanding of the floor here, so we don't get kind of things coming at us one after another here. So I'd like to recommend that we do that going forward. And if there are any other kind of alligators right below the surface, that there's a fourth lane in the school, or a fifth, or a sixth, let's kind of get those in front of us. The second, Chief Wiles, in the note here, you mentioned something about a change in the command structure. Is that change temporary? The impact of that change on the clerk's work?
Potentially. Before I got promoted to my current position as the chief, we had a chief and 2 captains. Prior to that, we had a chief, 2 captains, 2 lieutenants.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're down to the chief and a captain. So there's, I guess, what level of temporary are we talking about? There's in this budget now, there is a position for an additional lieutenant. Lieutenant will take on, is going to be an administrative position. That said, I can't just take all of my administrative duties and dump them on one person. Right now I have them spread out quite a bit. I have 6 patrol sergeants. All my patrol sergeants have administrative duties. I would love to have my patrol sergeants do what they're supposed to do and be frontline supervisors on the road without doing any administrative duties. The lieutenant, when I bring that to you guys, will pick up a lot of those administrative duties that the sergeants currently have to relieve them of those duties so they can do their supervision on the road, making sure that our policies and procedures are followed and that we're providing the proper service to the residents in the community.
So my question was really more along the lines of, if your command structure change impacts the amount of effort that your clerk does, then if you get more help there, does that mean that the clerk's, wage or effort or whatever would go down and we'd see a reduction? I don't think that's where you're at, right? So that's kind of a non-issue here. The effort and the activities that your clerk's performing are what we ought to be considering as a baseline here.
Correct.
Right? So if you'll just allow me a couple more.
Sure.
So this wage increase, 26-24, the new rate, effective, when is that going to be effective?
I would hope the next pay period after it is approved this evening if it is.
Okay. maybe this is the wrong time, or I'm just gonna ask questions, I guess someone
Sure.
tell me to stop, but what's her current rate, and when was that rate effective?
Her current rate is 2408.
And it was,
As of August of 16.
okay, so this is 16, so this is 8 months ago.
Correct.
And we talked about this a little bit before, but, we started to get to there, but in terms of a market rate, what would you consider, or how would we come to a place where 26, 24 is a market rate for someone who's been with a police department for 18 years doing similar kind of, do we have any data?
Right, I think you'll find around the county, that'll be difficult to find.
Okay.
We are structured in a way now to provide services that other departments just don't provide. We do things differently at Grand Blanc Township, and that's part of our success. You won't find another person that is the assistant to the chief that does what Ms. Pyer does. You
So
won't find
so
that
no
person.
real comparables?
Correct. The only comparables that I looked at were the internal comparables of the other non-represented that she was previously tied to.
Okay, I'm set, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Mr. Scott?
I'd like to comment. Chief, how many people in the state of Michigan will be credited with the new process if we make it?
In the state of Michigan,
Yes.
right now, there's only 19 that have applied.
And, okay, applied, nobody's had it yet.
Right.
Anybody else?
I hear one agency is close. There's no agency in Genesee County, police agency that is as close as we are.
You know, folks, it's just like Treasurer Guzek could attest to in our finance department. These things, they don't hand them out like they're free, okay? These are hard work to get to, right? And so, Trustee Massey said it pretty well. So there's a lot of work that goes into those kinds of things. But on another note, or I guess on a conclusion here to my comments, is that you've heard the chief, based on an evaluation, you know, not based on comparables to other employees, but based on his evaluation. This is his recommendation. I'd just like to ask Mr. Lehman, you're the chief budget officer of this township. You're charged with managing the budget. If we've got it, and we can figure out how to pay that, and is it your recommendation, you probably reviewed the evaluation as well, right?
I have.
Is it your recommendation that we give this pay raise?
I concur with Chief Wiles' recommendation for Ms. Potter.
I make a motion then, Mr. Chairman, if I can, that we give the police administrative assistant per the recommended wages by the chief of police.
Support.
Okay, it sounds like we have consensus here. I don't know, maybe, I know there's some opposition to it, but it sounds like everybody's pleased with the way things are going with the police. Yes, Mr. Mansell?
Discussion, just one question here. So this wage would be effective until we decide to change it again?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Lehman?
A couple of points of housekeeping that Trustee Mansour brought up that I think are important to make. There was a motion made by the board in 2013 that, again, tie-barred kind of three folks together and said that they were going to get AFSCME increases every time AFSCME went through. Mr. Laddie can probably answer this question, but I think that as we move forward here, you have to remember the difference between the organization now with what we do in human resources compared to what was going on in 2013. We will have everyone under an employment agreement. We do have a performance evaluation process in place that didn't exist before. That process takes place in January with those, any recommended increases come before the board in March. We want to stabilize that process, just like you had mentioned, that we want everybody to go through this process. So all non-represented employees, obviously represented employees, that's driven by their collective bargaining agreements, and that will happen when it happens. But I would hope that this board then would make that correction, that for the non-represented employees that we're discussing, that they would follow the performance evaluation process that our department heads follow, and that would occur on January 1 of each year for the prior calendar year, and so that we can put that through, because I think that would start that continuity. And then the other point I would make is that with your deputy clerk and deputy treasurer, those are completely different animals. Those are political appointees of those two office holders. And the board sets their compensation when they set their compensation. The treasurer and clerk can bring that forward at any time that they deem necessary to make corrections to theirs. And it's totally up to the board. They don't go through our performance evaluation process. They're not employees of mine per se. They don't report to me. They only report to those office holders. So they are completely different animals than all the other employees. So I would kind of like to just make that clarification that we recognize that they're political appointees differently, because I will not be doing evaluations on those folks.
And so their potential increases could come at us at any time that.
Whatever the clerk or treasurer would feel
So
is
as far as setting the
appropriate
timing
forward.
Mr. Laddie, did you have?
No, I concur exactly, and so that Ms. Potter will now be in the cycle of review and under the review processes that are in place for all the other employees. And by the way, we touched on this earlier, we would like to formalize all of her current working conditions and her benefits in an agreement that nearly identically mirrors our deputy treasurer. And so I'm assuming that that's a part of that was considered as a part of the motion as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Buzak?
Yes, the question I have is, a few years back, when I presented that program to tie bar these people together, because we would bring things back to the board and they didn't get any raises. And I brought it together to say these three people were not part of the union and they've been sidestepped for years, and we finally got it accomplished, okay? And it sounds like you're saying they're not gonna get the annual raise that comes through the ASME, and that was the whole point of me setting that up. Unless I'm confused, because I know that I'm not gonna be bringing anything back unless something drastically changed in my department. And that's the only reason I brought those changes through, and I can't talk about it because it was all in executive session. But there were a lot of changes that were brought to the board for that increase. But I want to make sure that they're not overlooked, so that when something changes in the program, they're protected on health care, they're protected on the pension, they're protected on the
Let's have
raises.
Mr. Laddie respond, I think.
We, for a lot of good reasons, the idea of the tie bar, and I think Mr. Guzak, you're exactly correct, was so that we didn't forget about these three unrepresented employees who didn't have contracts. We broke with that policy that the future board had created, again, for good reasons. So that concept, that tie bar concept is fallen by the wayside based on our actions with the deputy treasurer, deputy clerk, and now with Ms. Potter. So that idea is done, and just like it happened with us over the last 3 or 4 months, you will be responsible for keeping up with your deputy's compensation. Ms. Lane will, and then
Okay, so just so
Chief Weiser.
I'm clear on this, then when ASME gets a raise, the deputies are not gonna get a raise.
that's my understanding, is that
Okay, well, I
we've
just have
handled
to
it
know
all
that because
individually.
that's completely different than what I.
Two quick questions.
Mr. Thomas?
Through you to Mr. Laddie. Mr. Laddie and Mr. Levina, two quick questions. There will be a contract, just like we did with the two deputies, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because as you know, the two deputies have different type of variations to their overall package.
This employment agreement
I
will
understand.
memorialize exactly what she has currently. There's no question about, we're not renegotiating, we're not asking for anything. It follows the benefits that are provided in our employee manual, and all the employment agreement will memorialize the benefits as they currently exist.
So it's going to be a mirror image of the treasurer, deputy treasurer, not the deputy clerk.
Right,
correct?
yeah.
But it'll be in the same contract form again, yes?
Correct.
Okay, my other question is, I can understand the deputy clerk and the deputy treasurer having their own separate contracts because they're not really run through us. The only thing we have to do is the budget, to make sure the budget's in their office to support it. Why aren't the other folks not on ASME?
It's a good question, but typically they're considered as part of the administrative team. So they are part of our supervisory administrative team. That's why they're not part of the bargaining units. We do not, in fact, there was a time that the township had a chapter that was kind of supervisory in nature, but you typically don't include your administrative team, myself, the department heads, and administrative assistants, or the HR person for that matter, in a bargaining unit for those very reasons. They are management of the other personnel, and so you don't include management within the same bargaining units as your employees.
Okay. So there's a motion, there's a second. Ready for a vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, one opposed. Mr. Massey?
Well, I was gonna ask the question before the vote.
Well,
What
I
is
see
Mrs.
her
Potter?
yet.
She's sitting out there in the audience.
She's the administrative assistant for the police chief.
No, I mean, in person. I know what other title.
Well, she didn't come to the microphone, so I don't know if she wants to be identified or not, but we'll introduce you.
Oh, okay, you are. Okay, thank you for raising your hand.
Okay, thank you very much, police chief. Okay, with that, a couple other items. We heard from the community a little bit tonight. I don't know if there's anything real brief that anybody wants to bring up as far as an issue that they've heard out there. We aren't going to necessarily create another agenda here, but if there's anything pertinent that we need to look at a future meeting. Yes, Ms. Lane?
You won't be looking at it in an immediate future meeting, but I have had 2 informational meetings, one with Green Valley Subdivision and one with Village Green, about wanting to redo their roads. And they have taken their petitions now, and they have 180 days to see if they can get significant signatures to proceed with the project. So that's why I'm saying I'm becoming an expert again on streets and lights. So if they are successful, then there is a whole process you will go through in public hearings.
The expert we need is the expert on how to pay for roads and streets.
We're working on it.
But thank you, Ms. Lane. Future agenda items, I think we have a list of what those are going to be, and if there's something that isn't on the list, please bring it to our attention. With that, I'm going to entertain a motion. Well, Mr. Laddie, would you like to speak to the next issue with regard to executive session?
I would. I'd like to ask the board to consider going into an executive session to discuss a written attorney's opinion that I forwarded to you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Support. It's a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kemp?
Yes.
Mr. Mansur?
Yep.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself? Yes. Mr. Bell?
Yes.